Hi folks, HR Funk here. I had a request from a viewer to do a video demonstrating the field stripping of third generation Smith & Wesson pistols. Specifically, the viewer asked to do a demonstration of the Smith & Wesson 1076 that I did the review on some time ago, but what I'm going to show you with the third generation pistols holds true for the entire third generation family. Now, I do need to stress this is the field stripping procedure for the third generation Smith & Wesson pistols. There is a slight difference between the first and second generation and the way they field strip as opposed to the third generation. So if you have a first or second generation pistol, about 90% of what I'm going to show you is the same. However, there is a slight difference. I may have to do a companion video in the future if you folks would like to see it, demonstrating the small difference between the first generation and second generation pistols and the third generation pistol. But without further ado, let's take a look at how we field strip the third generation pistols for basic cleaning and routine maintenance. As with all firearms, field stripping a third generation Smith & Wesson pistol begins with a safety check to make sure that you're handling an unloaded firearm. First, we remove the magazine, lock the slide to the rear, inspect the chamber and the magazine well to make absolutely sure we have an empty weapon that we're dealing with. Now, I'm going to release the slide and I'm going to show you the biggest secret there is to field stripping a third generation Smith & Wesson pistol. And that secret is holding the pistol properly when you start to disassemble it. If you start with a firing grip, like I have here, open your right hand and wrap your fingers above the top of the slide so that you're holding it just with your thumb and the fingers of this hand. This process is much, much easier because what you're going to do is retract the slide until this small notch lines up with this side of your slide stop. The slide stop is attached to a pin that goes all the way through the frame and projects from this side of the frame here. When I line this notch up with this part of the slide stop and push on the pin, or the portion of the pin that protrudes from the frame, I'm going to be able to push the slide stop out and remove it from the pistol. People make this much more difficult than it actually is. They try to do this with two hands and push back with this and reach under somehow and push that, which makes it very, very difficult. If you do this, rotate your fingers up on the top, pull back on the slide until the slide stop or this notch lines up with the slide stop. Now I'm just going to take my finger and push on that stud or on that pin. It's going to come right out. I have now removed it. I'm going to put it off to the side here, and at this point the pistol is basically ready to come apart. All I'm going to do is relax my grip slightly. The slide is going to move forward. As it comes forward, you'll see that I'm starting to expose the recoil spring guide and the recoil spring. I want to capture that recoil spring and recoil spring guide with my left hand, and I'm just going to slide the frame right off, or the slide rather, right off of the frame. At this point, the frame is basically ready for cleaning or inspection or whatever you might need to do with it, but we're not going to take it apart any further for a basic field strip. Now, what I want to do, since I've still got that recoil spring and recoil spring guide captured with this hand, is grasp the back of the recoil spring guide. Make sure this is not pointed towards your face, particularly your eyes, because if this slips out of your grip, it's going to come shooting out of there with some force behind it. You don't want to take a recoil spring guide in the eye. And you can remove your recoil spring and your recoil spring guide as a unit. They can then come apart for any cleaning or inspection you may need to do with them. At this point, all you have left is the barrel and the slide. If you take your finger and lift up on the portion of the barrel that is visible in the ejection port, grasp it and lift up on the back and pull out, you have now completely field stripped your third generation Smith & Wesson pistol. Most people tell you once they get to this point, assembly is in reverse order. I'm actually going to take you through reassembly because there's a couple of things that you need to be mindful of. When you reinstall the barrel into the slide, you do put the muzzle first into the forward portion of the slide. You can just release the barrel and it will lock into place. The recoil spring goes back on the recoil spring guide. You insert it into the lower portion of the slide, and there is a notch right back here. Maybe I should take this back off. There is a notch right here that the round portion of the recoil spring guide fits into. It's important to get it into that notch. If it's not in there, when you reinstall the slide onto the frame, it's going to push forward on the recoil spring guide and it'll protrude from the end of the slide. If you ever have that, all you have to do, you don't have to take the pistol back apart, just grasp that protruding portion of the recoil spring guide, pull on it slightly and twist, and that will locate it where it's supposed to be back in there, and you'll feel it snap into place. When you release it, the recoil spring guide will go right back into the slide and the pistol will be fine and ready to use. When you get to this point, we've reinstalled the barrel, recoil spring, and recoil spring slide. We're going to start to position the slide onto the rails. When you get to this point, you'll notice that the slide is up against the ejector. Push down on the ejector, which will allow you to move the slide further onto the rails. And for some reason, mine is not wanting to cooperate. There we go. When you get to this point, do exactly what I was talking about before, where you wrap your fingers across the top, pull back. Now I've lined this notch up with the hole for my slide stop. I'm going to reinsert the slide stop, push it forward till it snaps into place, release, cycle the slide a couple of times to make sure you have it. At this point, you know you have an unloaded firearm, but you can reinsert the magazine, lower the slide, do a function check. Does the hammer fall when you push the trigger? Both in single and double action mode for this pistol. Does the slide lock open on an empty magazine? Yes. Does the magazine fall free? Yes. Is the magazine disconnect working properly? If you have a magazine disconnect, here we see the magazine is in. We remove it. It works properly in double action mode. And it works properly in single action mode. At this point, our pistol is ready to go back into service. There's one other point I thought I should make about reassembly that actually doesn't apply to the 1076, but does apply to many of the traditional double action Smith & Wesson 3rd generation pistols. I mentioned when you get back to this point, you have to push down on the ejector before you can slide the slide back any farther. On the traditional double actions, you will also have a sear release lever on this side, which protrudes up above this portion of the frame. So you'll need to press down the ejector first, and then the sear release lever on this side, in order to be able to slide the slide back into place before you can get around to reinstalling the slide stop. Okay, there you have it, folks. That's basic field stripping of the 3rd generation Smith & Wesson pistols. If you have any questions or comments about this video, feel free to leave them. Also, if you have any requests or any other things you'd like to see, I'd be glad to listen to those as well. And otherwise, until next time, thanks for watching and good shooting. Bye-bye.